Carl Jung described a transformation so gradual and so quietly universal that most people live through its entire arc without ever consciously noticing the moment it actually happened. It begins, he observed, in the first half of a person's life when the young person's will and desire reach outward into the world with genuine passion, building a career, a family, a body of work, a whole structure of achievements and possessions and relationships poured into being through real labor and real personal investment. In this early season, Jung noted, a person breathed their own life into the things they are building, and this outward breathing feels, for a long time, like pure vitality, pure forward momentum, pure creative passion. But Jung observed something genuinely important about what happens next, a transformation that arrives for most people without any dramatic announcement. The things a person has built with such genuine passion, Jung noted, do not remain forever passive recipients of that early creative energy. They begin, gradually and almost imperceptibly, to take on a life of their own, multiplying, demanding, requiring maintenance and attention that the person's original burst of passion never anticipated having to sustain indefinitely. Jung used a genuinely striking phrase to describe what can happen when this transformation runs its full course unexamined. What was once pursued as genuine passion, he observed, gradually becomes mere duty, and duty, left unexamined for long enough, can eventually become what he called an intolerable burden, something that feeds on the very life of the person who originally created it. This is a genuinely uncomfortable image, and Jung offered it deliberately because he believed most people fail to notice this transformation happening in their own lives until it has already progressed considerably. The career built with genuine early passion becomes, without any single dramatic turning point, an obligation sustained mainly through inertia and necessity. The family and household built with genuine early love and intention becomes, gradually, a structure of duties performed more from habit and expectation than from the living, breathing passion that originally brought it into being. Jung was careful to note that this transformation does not necessarily mean the underlying love or commitment has disappeared entirely, but the quality of the energy sustaining it has often shifted dramatically from what he called the eager I want of early passion to the far heavier and more resigned I must of unexamined obligation. Jung located this transformation specifically around the arrival of what he called the second half of life, a genuine turning point that most people pass through around the middle of their years, whether or not they consciously mark or notice its arrival. He described this turning point using a vivid natural image, comparing it to the exact moment when a day reaches its peak brightness and evening simultaneously begins to be born, even while the sun still appears to be at its very highest point. In the same way, Jung observed, the moment of a person's greatest outward achievement and greatest outward unfolding, when they are giving themselves most fully to their work and their accumulated life structure with their whole strength and their whole will, is often precisely the same moment when the quiet transformation toward duty and eventual burden has already secretly begun, even though the person themselves may not notice this shift until considerably later. This offers something genuinely important for anyone currently deeply invested in building a career, a family, or any significant life structure through genuine early passion. Jung's understanding suggests that this transformation from passion to duty to potential burden is not a sign of personal failure or a mistake in your original choices. It is, he believed, an almost universal and largely unavoidable pattern in how a human life naturally unfolds, following what he called definite laws rather than simply random individual misfortune. The genuine danger lies not in the transformation itself, which Jung considered largely inevitable, but in failing to notice it happening, continuing to operate on pure inertia and unexamined obligation long after the genuine passion that originally justified all the labor has quietly departed. This suggests a genuinely useful practice, particularly for anyone who senses they may be approaching or already living through this transition. It involves periodically and honestly examining your own major life structures and asking, with real and sometimes uncomfortable honesty, whether they are currently sustained by something closer to genuine, living passion, or whether they have gradually shifted into the heavier territory of pure duty and habitual obligation, continued mainly because stopping now feels unthinkable rather than because genuine desire still animates the continuing effort. This examination does not necessarily mean abandoning everything that has shifted from passion into duty, since genuine responsibility and commitment often require sustaining effort even after the original passionate spark has naturally dimmed. But Jung's understanding suggests that honestly recognizing this shift, rather than remaining unconscious of it, is the necessary first step toward preventing duty from eventually calcifying into the genuinely destructive burden he warned about. There is also something worth understanding about why Jung believed this particular transition, the arrival of the second half of life, carried such enormous psychological importance. He believed that the tasks appropriate to the first half of life, building outward, establishing a place in the world, accumulating structure and achievement, were simply not the same tasks appropriate to the second half, which called instead for a different and more inward kind of development, one that a person who remains unconsciously stuck in first half patterns, still driven by pure duty and habitual obligation toward external accumulation, often never gets the chance to properly begin. Think honestly about the major structures in your own life, your career, your relationships, your accumulated commitments and possessions, and ask which of them are currently sustained by something closer to genuine, living passion and which have quietly shifted into the heavier territory of pure duty, continued mainly through inertia rather than through any remaining genuine desire. If you can identify something in your own life that has shifted from passion into duty, write below the single word for what that thing originally was when you first began building it with genuine enthusiasm. Naming the shift honestly is often the first step toward either reclaiming some genuine passion for it or consciously and deliberately beginning to release what has become, in Jung's understanding, more burden than genuine life. Because the quiet transformation from passion to duty to potential burden that Carl Jung described was never, in his understanding, a sign of personal failure. It was one of the most reliable and most universal patterns of an entire human life, and noticing it honestly, rather than remaining unconscious of its slow and steady progress, was, he believed, one of the essential tasks that the second half of life quietly asks of every person who lives long enough to reach it.